Uh, Now I'm going to present a paper on discourse markers in Assamese. Assamese is a language spoken in the northeastern part of India, and the discourse markers, they play an important role in the structure of Assamese language. And Assamese permits a large group of elements to function as discourse markers. We can divide them into two groups depending on their distribution. The first, we can refer them as the free morphemes, and they enjoy the status of the independent words. And the second one, that's a small group, which represents some particles, and they are added as suffixes to some independent words. In this study, I'm going to delimit my study in this paper, focusing only on those markers that function as suffixes. And in terms of distribution, I want to say here that these particles are capable of being attached as enclitics to almost all the constituents of a clause, and thereby suggesting that the proper level of syntactic operation is that of discourse. So here, in the second group, we find 7 particles, which you can term as enclitics also. They are he, so, no, to, o, e, and a. And they function, depending on the context, they function as focus enclitics also. They can be assigned in specific meaning, but depending on the role they play in a context, in a sentence, we can find out different types of meanings out of the same particle. Okay. Then, now I want to analyze them, the particles, one by one. And one thing I want to say here, that all these markers, the discourse markers, they can occur with words functioning as subject, object, adjunct, and predicator in a sentence. So the first one is the discourse marker here, and here we observe that when it occurs with words functioning as object, it plays the role of exclusive. Actually, here in the sentence, it plays that role, and in the later, we find that it plays the marker, it can play different types of role. Here, this is he kotha to ami he jano, only we know the matter. Here, in the context, if you observe the context, then we find that it refers to a situation where the speaker confirms that they are the only people who know the matter, others not aware of the matter, of the fact. Then, when we observe it was functioning as object, then we find that it plays, from the semantic point of view, it plays the role of clarification. It clarifies that the hearer is the only one person who searched for at that moment. For example, he tetia tumakhi bicharisil. He wanted none but you at that time. Again, in case of adjunct, we observe that it plays the role of singling out. As in the example, mahot edin ba dudin he mas kina hoy. Fish is bought only once or twice a month. So the context here says that it points out the fact that the habit of buying fish is not a common matter. It is an occasional type of thing for some people. Then, when it occurs with was functioning as predicator, we find that it performs the role of confirmation. So here it refers to a situation where the speaker confirms something to the hearer. So these are the main words, elements where the particular term he can occur. But depending on context, I have observed it only 4 roles, but depending on context, I have observed that at least 9 roles he can perform in sentences. Like, for example, exclamation, singling out, revealing truth, clarification, contrastiveness, then rhetorical, argument, delimiting something, exclusive, denial, etc. Okay. Now coming to the next one, the discourse marker 2. Again, the same thing we can observe. It can occur with the words functioning as subject. Then the role is contrastive, like title aru tumi moi nahoy, and the context is she's not like you and me. That means it's someone being the most important person hereby, that someone is given more importance compared to others. Then, in this object position, it plays the role of denial, but it's open-ended in the nature, that because here mukto is referring to only one person, and there are the possibility of being someone, and that's not that is indicated there clearly. He mukto eko kwanasi, he didn't say anything to me. Then, in case of predicator, it's a question, apuni muk khong kora nai to. here no question mark is not there, but in the tone we can find out that this is a kind of interrogative type of tone is there, and the speaker faces a dilemma whether she thinks that she has been misunderstood, and so she tries to ask the person whether he is angry with her. Then with the adjunct, again confirmation we find, and here it refers to a situation where the speaker confirms the situation. কিন্তু রাধায় কলমের একটু লেখা নাই, পেন্সিলেরহে লিখিছে, but Radha didn't write with pen but with pencil. Then here in case of two also, I have observed that it can play at least 11 roles depending on the context, like statement, unwanted action, exclamation, exclusive, suggestion, denial, implied meaning, rhetorical, anticipation, etc. Then in the discourse marker no, I have found that here though the same thing happens here, it occurs with the was functioning as subject, object, and predicator in exam, but the thing is that this particle occurs mainly in interrogative sentence, but the asymmetry of form function alignment can be observed here because the interrogative words do not trigger questions here. They simply, sometimes depending on context, they simply express astonishment, sometimes the denial of possibility, and so on. So here it which was functioning as subject, we find that it plays the role of denial of the possibility. Moino Ramok kenekoi sinipam, how can I recognize Ram? It refers to the context where the speaker wants to convince someone that it is impossible for him to know Ram. Again, in object also we find the denial of possibility. I want to skip this portion. The same thing is here. In predicator, the role is that of astonishment. He ki khale no, moi dekhon eko randhai nasilo. So here he is once again the interrogative term, but this is a kind of surprise and astonishment, and the context is what did he have? I could nothing. A situation where the speaker has to think about a person who had something, but the actual scenario is that she hadn't cooked anything for him. Then in exam, this is factual assertion. Again, we have the term key there, the question term what, but here another term we find is the aru. This is coordinating conjunction. The status of aru is that of coordinating conjunction in Assamese, but the thing is that here it's not coordinating anything. Simply is functioning as an adjunct. Okay, and it refers to a situation where the speaker confirms the fact that everything is done, and at the same time, it also expresses the speaker's dissatisfaction about disclosing some matter. Then, in the next one, marker is shown where we find that again it occurs which was functioning as subject. Astonishment is here. Okay, and then Ramesh Zane je abeli moi Ram already knows that I go for walk in the afternoon, and it describes the situation where the speaker did not expect something, but it happened. It occurred immediately. Then in the next one, the same thing. This is counter expectation. The same thing is here. So it is also, it refers to the context. It didn't invite me that the speaker he expected something, but the result went against his expectation. Then in the predicator, here I want to say something regarding the predicator. When we use shown in predicate portion in case of verb, we find that in imperative sentence structure, it indicates the polar directive function, that kind of role it plays, the particle shown when it is added to the verb form. Okay, here is the example of this one. To me, please inform him about the matter. But I have not given another example. There is some examples like to me kothatu janaisun. You have already known the matter. Here, this is the role played by soon is that of the counter expectation, not the polite form. You have already known the matter. Well, then the discourse marker, in case of discourse marker O, the primary function of this discourse marker is to assure the inclusion of some particular activity, and we can observe it everywhere, which when it occurs which was functioning as a subject, the role of inclusion is there. He too knows the matter. Okay, then if it is with object, the same thing is here, inclusion. Dhumuhai gosdalu bhangi pelale, the wind broke the tree too. So two is again here. It refers to the same situation, and here it expresses both factual assertion and inclusion of some activity. Then again in predicator, it plays a different role, like factual assertion. Imankoi koi koyo moi tak lorabo noarilo. I couldn't make him do by asking him to do something repeatedly. Okay, so the topic of discussion is here is some activity which created a kind of dissatisfaction in the mind of the speaker. It's not the inclusion kind of thing. Okay. So here, one thing I want to add that it functions as object. I have discussed as object, and about adjunct. Somehow I missed that slide here about adjunct. It's said here that the same thing is also here. The factual statement we find in adjunct also. Now coming to the next marker, E, we find that it occurs which was functioning as subject, then adjunct, and then as predicator. But it occurs with object only in the case where we find that already some other discourse marker that have already been added to that particular thing, and then only we can add it in object position. And here in subject, it is playing the role of exclusive, and this is kebol jodui kothatu jane, only jodu knows the matter. Then in adjunct also, it is playing the role of inclusive. Rita ratipur parai yat ase. Rita is here since morning. Here the speaker states that a girl named Rita has been at some particular place since morning. This is the inclusion of some particular period of time. Then as predicator, opposition. So here everywhere we find different types of role it's playing in the sentences. Then in the discourse marker A, it also occurs with the word functioning as a subject. But here one thing I want to make clear that only personal pronouns, it can occur only with personal pronouns, pronominal position, not with nouns. So the role is confirmation here. Then with object also, confirmation as well as prioritizing, I have discovered. Okay. Then in adjunct, this is confirmation again. And in verb, I have not observed the marker A, only in non-final position we can observe it, but in final position A is not there. Okay, and this is clear about A. Then I think this is the last one was about marker, and now I want to discuss something about the use of multiple discourse markers. We can observe the use of more than one discourse particles occurring in the same construction, sometimes with a single word, and there it plays the role of strong confirmation. It confirms, it firmly confirms something. Kothato ami to jano. Here three types of discourse markers have been used, A, E, and TO. We are the persons who knows the matter. This is the example of three markers, but we have two markers also. We can add two markers together also. And the second situation is within the same sentence in two different rows we can use the discourse markers. Here, tumi jodi jani silai. In the first one, in the first it is here, E is there, and in the second, tumi no taloi goisila kyo. So in two words we are having two different types of discourse markers. This is the strong opposition of the sentence. If you knew it earlier, then why did you go there? It refers to a discussion where the speaker faces an unexpected situation and he very strongly opposing the situation. So here are my findings. That there are 7 particles that function as bound elements in sentences. In terms of their distribution, they invariably occur in word final position. They can occur with words functioning as subject, object, adjunct, and predicator, as we have already observed. They can also function as focus analytics. The roles change depending on the context, and I have observed that some particles, they can play up to 11 roles depending on the context. Okay, and in the conclusion, I want to say that the study of the analysis of discourse markers in Assamese, it needs some context to be observed. This is a vast area of study, and there are so many functions that can be identified depending only on the expressions. And one thing I must have to admit here, that the difference in tone also, sometimes it can make a difference in the meaning in the same sentence with the same words. So there is a scope of further study to observe and analyze the roles and functions of these markers. And here is my reference. Okay, thank you all.